So, welcome, Will. Really lovely to have you on here today. So, Will, could you just tell me what you were like before you joined the program?
So I was suffering with fatigue and headaches. Um, Often quite like a thudding headache that would stop me from sleeping, and then also these almost like electrical feeling
Mm.
signals going through my head that were very uncomfortable. Um, and
And
sometimes I
this,
would have,
this is, sorry, this is from long COVID?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had COVID for the second time in September 2023,
Hmm.
and I didn't. I would sort of recover from what felt like really bad flu sort of symptoms with headaches. Uh, I would get better for a week or so in the month, and then I would suddenly crash again and feel like, oh, I've got another flu.
Yeah.
And this happened every month. And going to the GP, they said, oh, well, it can't be to do with COVID. It can't be to do with long COVID because, you keep getting better. And that's not the pattern, as though they wanted me to just be ill
Interesting.
constantly for me to get a
Yeah.
referral. Um, but yeah, I had my final kind of flu-like symptoms in December, and then I just didn't get better. I just um, stayed fatigued through the winter, and I had no idea what was going on. Um, and I wasn't able to get any help through the NHS. They referred me to a long COVID clinic, but it was way, way in the future, over 6, 7 months after it all began. I'd also had COVID 2 years previously in 2021. And looking back now, I see that I was ill a lot in
Yeah.
between those
Yeah.
two bouts.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people, I think I probably thought, well, COVID has just sort of messed me up in some way that, we can't know how exactly, but it's just maybe more sickly. But
Yeah.
really, I think there was probably some kind of long COVID going on there where my nervous system was never quite recovered and was prone to firing off and giving me what felt like colds and flus. Probably had like five in the year, each year at least.
Yeah. So you had all the sickness behaviors that they talk about, talk about sickness behaviors or the types of symptoms that the body has when it's exposed to viruses, etc. You know, the and they just kept repeating and coming back and getting stuck in them, which is what Navier talks about. The sickness loop gets stuck. Those sickness behaviors get stuck instead of the body moving on and being able to heal. So, what brought you to the program?
So I was very, very lucky because I'd just eventually been for my appointment at the long COVID uh, clinic in central London, and they told me some upsetting things, um, that I might not get better, or that if I did get better, this would happen every time I got COVID again,
Yeah.
which at the time seemed to be a kind of yearly or every couple of years event. So I thought, well, if I've been ill for almost a year and I get COVID once a year or once every other year, I'm going to be ill for most of the rest of my life. So I
And how did
was,
that affect you?
well, I
Told that.
I don't want to be overblown, but I was feeling suicidal. I was having suicidal thoughts, as anyone would do, because what have you got to live for if you're going to be ill permanently? So I was, and they put me on some drug trials as well, and they were uncomfortable. The drugs, they were like really extreme anti-inflammatories that were making me feel sick. Um, so I was in a terrible place, and then a friend remembered that his cousin's wife, Nikki Dupont, uh, had had chronic fatigue for 3 years and had recovered, and that there was a program she'd used, and she called
Mm.
me and just delivered this message of hope and said, "You are going to get better." And just hearing that was incredible. And I signed up to the program that day and just got straight on with it the next day. And within a week, it was quite miraculous what was happening. And I had a sudden upswing.
And
Um,
this doing the training videos and the assignments initially.
yeah, I think that one reason that it was so effective for me is that it resonated with
Mhm.
lots of things that I was already doing. Maybe not during the illness, but I'm a musician
Yeah.
and I'd done a lot of yoga.
Hmm.
And so the recovery program was really about doing these things. And once I realized that making sound and moving were going to be the ways to get better, then the recovery process became this really enjoyable thing, and the activity became,
Exactly.
you know,
That movement and vagal exercises and all the other things we teach are actually good for you.
mm,
Whereas so many people in different avenues of ME, chronic fatigue, etc., talk about post exertion malaise, where people then become terrified of any movement exertion. So that is so interesting for people watching to learn that actually doing these things is part of recovery. So that is so interesting. And so would you say that you got really stuck because you started to believe that you weren't going to recover? When you say you were suicidal, what do you think were the key things, the saboteurs that got you stuck?
I was terrified.
Mhm. As
Your
anyone
body.
would be.
Right, right. And I know that everyone that has experienced this can relate.
Mhm.
Anyone that has got any kind of, like, I've got a bit of an injury at the moment. I don't know what's going on with it. And naturally, until someone tells you that there's nothing to worry about, you are going to worry about it. I mean, obviously, I'm learning to do this less and less now, but my body was packing up, and I had no idea why.
Mhm.
I've always been an active person. So the idea that I would just be laid out on the sofa, unable to move, unable to really go out or see anybody. I'm also like a sociable person. Even if you're not a sociable person, obviously no one wants to be completely isolated. But there I was, isolated and exhausted. And the longer that went on, the more terrified I got. So there was no way out of that until I understood the science behind what was going on with my nervous system. There were lots of myths going around my head, like maybe the virus is stuck in me, and maybe
Yeah.
because of my genetic makeup, maybe this virus has just affected me in a different way to other people.
Yeah.
Like there was some physical property to it. But as soon as Reset to Thrive told me that there was nothing wrong with my body, that was huge. That was the real eureka moment where I understand for some people that might not be the reassurance that they want to hear. That your body is fine, but your brain is malfunctioning. That might be equally terrifying, but for some reason, for
Well,
me,
the
that
brain and your physiology is malfunctioning.
right.
So the whole feedback loop is malfunctioning, but it's the software that needs updating rather than any damage to the hard drive. There is no
Yeah,
physical damage, it's just the physiological responses and yeah, the malfunctioning of the neurological, malfunctioning of the physiological responses as a result.
yeah, Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, I'm not meaning to divide body and brain. They are the same
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but the idea that there is a way of accessing this system, and as we just said, it's with all of these wonderful techniques that are really enjoyable, fun to do, and that I was kind of doing already. I just wasn't doing them in a really wasn't really believing in them fully. You know, I still
Mhm,
had the anxiety that what was going on with me was somehow separate to that.
mhm. What would you say was so learning that the things you already used can then be applied to recovery, which is fascinating. The What else would you say was so obviously the belief that I can recover and that my body isn't physically damaged was a huge thing. Knowing that actually movement and music and all the other things that you can apply to recovery. Did you have any other things learning how to deal with setbacks differently, or what do you think was your recovery journey then?
Okay, so I think there's a missing bit here. You know, this when I discovered Reset to Thrive, it was over a year ago, um, 2024, March, April time. So springtime, 2024. And I would say I had from being at, let's say 15, 20%, I shot up to about 80%, but I stayed there.
Yeah.
And I stayed there throughout the summer. And I did some great stuff last summer. You know, I bought a canal boat that I'm now in today, and I bought it in Bath, and I brought it all the way to London. So I did this huge journey that was really inspiring because, you know, I couldn't have imagined doing anything like that
Mm,
very shortly before.
mm,
But still along the way, I was suffering with brain fog. I was not ever completely out. Um, and I carried on like this. And then during the winter this year in January, I had another proper crash.
mhm.
And it was a couple of months before I kind of rediscovered the program. It sounds crazy because, you know, this thing has helped you get better, but it's so easy to quickly get back
So
into
easy.
myths about what you can and can't do. And I guess I'd never really embraced the idea that I could do anything and that I was going to get completely better,
Mhm.
and that I was better. You know, I was still hanging on to the idea that there was something wrong
Yeah,
and being a little bit cautious
yeah.
accordingly. So it was
So
only
common.
in, yeah, in March this year, something changed and I kind of gave myself completely to the recovery. And I think this is the number one thing. Do you really believe that you're going to get better?
Absolutely.
We all have doubts, of course, that's human, but deeper than that, there should be this, no, I'm absolutely, I believe, I have faith. And it is that that gets you better.
And what gave you that faith? Was it useful doing the Nearly There course?
Yes, definitely. Although I think I was, when that course began, I think I was already there. And that course kind of was a way of cementing it for me.
Yeah,
Um, and talking to people in a similar situation was extremely helpful. But no, I think I just went really deeply into your book and also other books that you'd mentioned, like David Hamilton's work,
yeah,
Molecules of Emotion, Candice Pert, I
yeah.
think. Um, and I took myself off. I stopped work for a while, and I was obviously very lucky to be able to do that. But I took myself off to Tenerife and had a couple of weeks in relative isolation, but just completely immersed in the program and the recovery. Um, I think, yeah, to get yourself into that state of really believing, of really having full faith in the recovery, you have to practice that. It doesn't just happen.
You do.
Um, you learn to trust by trusting. You learn to have faith by
Yeah.
having faith.
And then you can start noticing where things are getting better.
Right, exactly. So that's the other, you need evidence that it's working. But there was lots of evidence, and it's focusing on that.
Exactly.
So journaling, huge
Because
thing, having your recovery journal.
there's actually evidence for both. There's evidence that you're not well, and there's evidence that sometimes you are well. But it's very much about that commitment to recovery, of focusing on the recovery. And that's so interesting because Sopa, who's on the program, is doing a webinar on commitment, because actually that is so interesting that you've said that it does take that commitment to stay on track, because it is so easy to fall back into the old patterns. And because they're very powerful, aren't they? I mean, terror, fear, and whatever is very, very powerful. That is so helpful for people because it's an enjoyable commitment. It's not like, a to-do list. Like you're saying, it's actually just getting back and practicing it as you would do, if you were practicing meditation or yoga or whatever. It's that's so, I think that is such an important point about
I think,
making
yeah,
that commitment and actually when you make the commitment.
yeah. So being 100% committed, crucial. But what you were saying earlier about evidence, there's evidence one way, there's evidence the other.
Mm,
Yes, of course, and there is in absolutely everything. Um,
mhm.
the point is like, which is going to be more useful to me?
Exactly.
Where, where is my sense of perspective going to be orientated? Um, I was thinking this yesterday about, when you feel like somebody's wronged you,
Hmm.
oh, I've been wronged. You can sometimes get into this righteous indignation, which feels kind of satisfying.
Hmm.
But is it useful to feel like you're being wronged all the time?
Yeah,
Absolutely not. What if this person was trying to do right by me? Wouldn't that make me feel better about myself, about them? Um, so if I'm having symptoms, this is a bit of a extrapolation, but if you're having symptoms and you're thinking, oh, this is so unfair, I'm being wronged in some way.
yeah,
Um, every time that's happening, it's going to drive you down. But
exactly.
the analogy that you use is about, the jumbo jet, the illness, the worst of the illness, which is behind me.
Yeah,
If that's gone into the distance, then all that's left is this little tiny wisp of cloud, and that's all the symptom is. And yes, that's evidence that I've had chronic fatigue syndrome, but maybe I don't have it anymore. Maybe
exactly.
it's just the tail end. And then I think when that was the really huge perspective shift for me, which was, what if I'm better?
Exactly. Exactly. And that phrase of, is it useful? And really considering, is it useful to be focused on the what if I am physically damaged when there's literally no evidence? There's 500,000 papers have come out since long COVID, and there is no evidence that there is physical damage, even though there's been lots of papers on microclots and all the rest of it. So
Mm.
why would it be useful to focus on that? Wouldn't it be much more useful to focus on, well, what if I can recover? Because nobody was an expert in long COVID because there hadn't been long COVID. So people were just saying, well, you're going to get stuck with it. There is no recovery, the same as they do for chronic fatigue, because they don't know the answers. They, I love that. God, I love what you've done. That commitment, the enjoyment of applying what you already can do in life to recovery, and really recognizing, actually, do you know what? I just need to stop and consider, is this useful? And if it's not useful, I need to practice doing what I need to do to get better. And that is just fabulous.
Mm.
The that's just wonderful. Thank you so much. You blow me away. Um, can I just ask how you're doing now?
Yeah, well, do you know what? I'm doing really good. Like physically, I have not had symptoms for a very long time. If I do, I feel like I have the tools to be able to overcome them. Um, but I guess I have made this my life in some ways. And that might sound to people who are kind of seeing this as a bit daunting, understandably, that might sound like, oh, I just want this to disappear.
Yeah,
I don't want to make this my life. But what I mean by that is my life has changed for the better. And
brilliant.
I've had to remold my life in a way that is working for me. Not just in terms of the illness, but more generally, things were not working before and certain patterns were persisting, and that is arguably why I did get into a difficult place with long COVID. So, I mean, one huge thing is that I am training for a marathon, and yeah, so you know,
I've not done that yet.
yeah, there's still time. Um, 6 months ago, I was unable to leave the house, and just getting moving again. I got back to a bit of jogging, but I hadn't done anything more than a couple of kilometers
Mm,
since falling ill the first time because I thought I would get tired. I knew that exercise and doing a couple of kilometers could make me feel much better, but I was still worried that getting physically exhausted would make me like fatigued.
mhm.
But they're not the same thing, you know. So it's knowing where that line is and just challenging that. Um, and then suddenly once you've challenged it and you know where that is, you can just really take it a lot further. So I was, doing these short runs, and then one day I just went a lot further, and it felt great. And
Amazing.
then a
That's
friend,
actually dissociated, if I've got it right, what you're saying. You're dissociating from when I get exhausted from running. That is not post-exertion malaise. That is normal, what happens to people when they're training. And actually, you just
yeah.
learn. Do you learn to take it back a pace? Do you learn to have a rest? What do you do in training for a marathon?
Um, you do well. You do a lot of running. I mean, a lot of running. You do each week. You do a really long run, and it gets further and further as you go along, and then you do a bunch of smaller runs throughout the week. And yeah, after the particularly tough days, you have a rest day, a couple of rest days a week, and you do feel really, really tired. So this has been tricky because
Mm,
a temptation for me is, oh, I'm feeling really tired.
exactly.
Oh dear, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen the next day? So I'm not saying you should train yourself to exhaustion to kind of learn that being exhausted is okay, but it is about challenging that notion of healthy tiredness versus fatigue. And I just think there you can feel the difference somewhere in the body. And for me, it's often to do with my head. My head feels strange when I'm
Yeah,
experiencing a nervous system malfunction kind of fatigue.
yeah.
Um,
And learning that actually it's normal to be exhausted after exertion, that that's
yeah,
got nothing to do with illness. That is a normal process, and you do you think as anybody else would think who had never been ill, which is, oh, I'm shattered after doing a long run. I'm just going to back off and have a recovery day.
yeah, yeah. And this
That's
is
amazing.
in your uh, acronym, fearless. You know, this is seeing things differently.
Yeah.
I remember when I'd gone to Tenerife and I'd gone exhausted,
Hmm.
fatigued, and I'd gradually each day I'd been resting a lot, breathing a lot initially, and then gradually I'd gone for a swim in the sea, um, and then I thought I want to go walking. You know, I want to try and hike into the hills, and I felt absolutely exhausted at the end of it. But I said, you know, anyone in this heat after hours of walking would be
Exactly.
feeling like this. And it's
Exactly.
okay if I'm a bit tired, it's just time to take a rest. But
It's
obviously,
changing that sickness mindset to recovery and normal, healthy mindset
yeah,
on
absolutely.
top of changing. Can you just, I know we won't wrap it on too much, but I'm loving what you're talking about. Um, can you just tell me that thing about exposing yourself to triggers? So you had quite a few triggers, um, which like Pavlovian response, the dog salivating to the bell, we have the same reaction. How did you deal with that?
So I think that the running analogy is a good one that when you're feeling good,
Hmm.
then you've got to seize that. You know,
Absolutely.
if I'm feeling good now, I know that exercise is going to be good for me. So
Brilliant.
I go for the run then. Uh,
Brilliant.
initially, it was it could be, you know, I'd run for a couple of kilometers and then maybe I'd start having a bit of a headache and I'd have to back off. But and sometimes I'd have to stop
Hmm.
um, and calm myself down and go through the process, go through the traffic lights. Sometimes I'd be able to stop mid-run and do this and just be in nature, which I'm surrounded by here, and reset and then keep going.
Hmm.
Um, so if you think that if people watching are thinking, you know, this task seems insurmountable, you know, to go from not really being able to run very much at all to then running 18 miles, 19 miles,
Amazing.
you know, it is just a case of going to that trigger point. In some cases, almost like inviting being triggered, not expecting it, not being fearful of it, but knowing that, yeah, something could happen. But that's okay because I know how to deal with it. And this is
Yeah.
an opportunity for me to practice and get better and better and better at this about facing
Ex-
fears. You know, it's not the symptom is almost like a way to practice this with everything that you're fearful of in life. So other triggers were I remember when I come back from this holiday and I was really worried about coming back to London because London itself was a trigger. It had become a trigger. It
Oh,
had become like
I remember we did coaching on this.
yeah.
Mm.
I had made London this scary environment because of being ill for so long, um, and because of having pressure on myself to, it's difficult living in London. There
Hmm.
are a lot of pressures, and it can feel like a shark tank.
Hmm.
Um, but if that's how you're perceiving it, then that's what you're going to get, It is going to be a fearful, scary place. So that was a huge trigger that I had to, and I did after coming back from being away, where I was feeling pretty well. I did take a knock, but I had to take the knock and still be committed, still be determined. So I had more symptoms. I had to work through them. I had to start socializing with people again. And the first time I did it, after half an hour, I had a huge headache. I was at a friend's house and I had to go into another room. I was doing everything I could, but I just couldn't bring it around, and I had to go back home. But then, what do you do about that? Am I seriously going to not socialize ever again?
Exactly. Exactly. Because that is what happens to a lot of people. What did you do?
I booked in the next day to go for a coffee with a friend, and the day after to go for a walk with a friend, and did things that felt just about manageable, like if we go for a walk outside for half an hour, that feels manageable.
Yeah.
And then that just became normal. And
Yeah.
I realized that seeing people gives me energy like it always did, you know.
And
And
and that's the whole thing, isn't it? That your absolute mindset is, I am not going to be trapped by this illness. I am going to overcome this because the illness can make you retreat from life, can make you retreat from every single trigger. And actually, what you're saying is, no, actually, we need to expose ourselves. It doesn't matter if it's, do you remember in the video that I did, I literally just took one step outside my front door. I didn't do anything major, but just doing that one step made me retrain that actually it is safe to go outside. I can go outside. And if I'd have to check a step and jump outside my front door 100 times to learn that all these things are neutral events, they're not triggers.
mm,
That is such an important commitment, isn't it?
they're neutral, yeah,
What you
they're
did is brilliant.
they're neutral, and even they're positive. That
Exactly.
seeing things in a nourishing light.
Exactly.
You know,
They're
I need to see people. I need to do what brings me joy. Blah blah blah. I think also maybe just I know it's very difficult when you've been ill for so long. You start to identify with that.
Yeah,
Um, I think I had to say I am not someone who's meant to be ill.
exactly.
That is
Exactly.
not my natural state.
Yeah.
And kind of cling to that.
And I am
Um,
not the illness.
yeah, and I had been for so long, and I had retreated completely. Um, and you're bound to if you're scared and you don't know what's going on.
Absolutely. And when you become so triggered by things automatically, nothing to do with your thinking, just automatically triggered so that the body shuts down, as it happened to me, it is a really scary place unless you understand what's happening. And and for you to be able to keep hold of who you are and what is good for me, and to do that, even if it was just going for a cup of coffee, or even if it was just, I remember one lad literally said, I'll see a friend for 5 minutes and just see how it goes. And that was this breakthrough. That was the start. And it's something tiny. It's not like major things we're asking people to do. that can have such a massive impact. And, you know, look at you now doing a blooming marathon. The so before we wind it up, because I'm just aware of time for people, um, what has it taught you now about life and doing life? Because it's much bigger than physical symptoms, isn't it? The whole of part two of the program and part two of the book is actually on physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual overload, um, and patterns that we may have run that didn't serve us. So what you say, you know, it's become part of my life, and I completely understand that because you're applying it to every aspect of your life. What would you say to people now that you've noticed about having been ill and what it's done for you now?
Well, one huge thing is the feeling that if I can beat this illness, then I can do anything.
Absolutely.
I know it's not, that's part one of that, but the other bit is it's not so simple. Um, the road is definitely long. Uh, and in some ways, I'm not as euphoric. Like I was absolutely euphoric in lots of the recovery because you could see things getting better and better, and having all of these successes and celebrating every success. This is so important. Yes, I just went for a 5-minute coffee with a friend, and really celebrating like you've just won Wimbledon. Um, I have to remind myself to keep doing that day to day. I think you can just get into the routine of life
Yeah.
and not remembering to be really, really joyful,
Mhm.
um, to be healthy again, and to just be out in the world.
Absolutely.
Um, so I think it's yes, there's patterns and heavy stuff to do with social emotional overload, um, which sometimes feels quite difficult. The idea that I've got to really change myself, but ultimately, I think it's just about being joyful with what is happening now. And if I am in that state, then those patterns will change over time. That is huge to get to the end of the day and think, oh, I've had a wonderful day, and to feel like that almost every day.
Amazing.
That that's all you need. The other stuff will fall into place. Um, so I'm just trying to stay committed to that in the way that I was committed to the recovery, and wake up, do my breathing, and say, I'm going to have a great day today. How am I going to do that? What sort of state of mind do I need to be in? What mindset? And it's not easy all the time. You can quickly forget, but I feel like I have the tools now to try and get back there always, even if it feels like things are a bit overwhelming. I know that I can get back.
Because life does throw us a load of curveballs. I mean, that doesn't stop. But
Exactly. And
now it's
yes,
the tools to deal with it.
absolutely. And there have been challenges, but I feel like I know now that I have to face them. I have to face pain. I mean, pain, physical pain. The way to recover from long COVID is to kind of accept and be okay with the pain that you're experiencing. And that is so huge because all of us run away from pain.
And likewise, you said before, learning to sit with emotional pain and let it pass and let it run its course and decide what is more useful and the right way to be dealing with it is so interesting, isn't it? Um, well, I'm
Yes.
going to wind up, but because you have just been so, so wonderful. So if there's one thing you'd like to say to anybody who may be watching this, what was the one thing that you would want to pass on to somebody?
Just know that you are going to get better. Uh, know it, not just believe it, because believing is
Yeah,
it's different to knowing it, this feeling,
absolutely.
and really trying to locate where that feeling is in your body, because it's there. It's in your gut. It's in my gut.
Hmm.
Because if you can access that feeling, then yeah, there's nothing to worry about. You're going to get better. It's okay.
Absolutely. And I would say come and join people that enable you to know that you can recover and to stay focused on that and move on and to avoid all of these scary stories or Facebook groups or whatever it is that are telling you otherwise. But I mean, that's people's choices, but that's certainly where I would be at.
Oh,
The,
absolutely. To access proper support, positive support from other people in a similar situation, that's absolutely crucial.
Mhm.
Definitely. You can't do it without that. You can't do it on your own, I don't think.
Yeah, really hard on your own. Thank you so, so much. You are an absolute star. And I will catch up with you soon to have a lesson on canal boats.
Oh yeah, anytime. Anytime.
Will in his canal boat. So thank you, and thank you to everybody that's been watching.
Thanks.
So if you are interested, do come and join the Reset to Thrive program. I would suggest to anybody to start by reading the book or listening to the Audible book, which is Reset to Thrive. Reset to Thrive is a program, and Breaking Free, a guide to recovering from chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID symptoms, is the book.